Welcome to Food Friends, a podcast inspiring home cooks to try new dishes in the kitchen by sharing trusted recipes, tips, and friendship. Hi, I'm Sonia.
And I'm Carrie. We met in Los Angeles over 15 years ago as personal chefs and haven't stopped talking about food since. We're so glad you're here.
Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Sonia.
300 episodes.
300 episodes with you. What an absolute joy.
I still can't get over that you and I have been doing this together for 4 years. More than 4 years, right?
Yeah, for more than 4 years. And I also think where we started with the idea of just being able to connect with each other each week and talk about food once you had left Los Angeles and we weren't seeing each other in person, I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think just taking that moment is so important. You remind me to do that for myself. I think we remind each other to do that. You know, I know we've had those conversations like, wow, let's take a beat and acknowledge this moment.
We've had this happen over the course of our friendship too, when we talk about a recipe and I'm like, was that your recipe or was that my recipe? Or who,
Yeah.
and then how did it become our recipe? Or when we've worked together and we've written recipes together, taking a second to reflect on how my friendship with you has really affected my cooking and the kinds of foods and recipes and flavors that I never would have discovered without you, and how that's become a part of my story and become a part of my family's story and a part of my son's story. My son, who constantly says, when is Auntie Sonia coming back to visit us? You know, and what is she bringing? Or, oh, we're making her recipe. Or when he doesn't realize it, we're making one of your grandmother's recipes. And so how your family stories become my family stories.
Yeah, and preparing for this episode, all of that was really on my mind, exactly what you just said, because what we're doing is we're picking 5 of our best bites of all time.
Yes.
First of all, spending every week thinking about what a best bite has been so helpful to me as a cook. And then going back, looking through all the best bites we've ever done together on the show, it struck me how many of them I make over and over and over and over again. Some are things that you brought into my life. Some are things we brought into our lives together. They're all somehow connected to, again, what you just said. And it's the kind of thing too, where I know so many of our listeners who are incredible. And it's been so fun to also connect with them live when we do our monthly Zooms. And Nicole is part of our community. And she had shared the other day that her children around the kitchen table were doing kind of an episode of the show. They were playing a game, which was, what was your best bite of the week?
Yes. I mean, I do have friends that come up and say to me, oh, my best bite this week was this. And one of the things that I really love about that is we both have a lot of other food friends in the world. And I have a food friend who was also a personal chef many years ago. She would say this funny thing, which was, you know, we think about these menus and then we shop them out. We spend all this time cooking. And she's like, and then the food disappears in 15 minutes. I didn't ever think about it that way until she said it. But when you think about what you put into home cooking, whoever you're cooking for, there's a lot that goes into that. And then it is something that you're not left with a painting. And so to go through your week and say, wait, what did I eat this week? And what was so good about it? That's such a fun way to relive all the great meals that you've had, or to also learn from the meals that were like maybe not the best and that you don't want to repeat. But we're talking about what are the ones that we're really repeating a lot.
Yeah. And so you and I both chose 5 of our top best bites since starting this podcast. It's fun to come back to them and to be like, okay, I'm taking a moment to reflect on what was actually good. And in reflecting, it makes you want to make the food again.
1,000%.
And it creates,
yes.
yeah.
Yes.
And it creates this new relationship to each recipe and dish. For the very first, you know, there's no order. I can't pick, this is the number one best of all time. So these
Fair
are just
enough.
5
Yes.
in no particular order. But I want to start with a recipe where I think neither of us could remember who started making it first, which is our coconut red lentil recipe. So our coconut red lentil recipe is something that you and I actually have taught together. For a while, we had a business before I moved to Portland where we were teaching cooking classes together.
Yes.
And we had this one class where we were teaching versatile, meatless dishes like bowls, and the coconut red lentils was a central part of that meal. But also, this is a dish that we made when we cooked our retreats together.
Yes. I don't know where it came from, but I think I very much credit you with adding the coconut to it. I don't which I
Really?
yes, I think so. Or I just think about you saying like, "We have to pour more coconut in this," which I really love. I think that's something that you and I have talked a lot about is how to get people who have different ways of eating at a table where everyone can kind of customize their own meal for themselves. And I think that's what I love about this recipe is that you can really kind of serve it to anyone and it has protein and it's rich and it's delicious and it's full of vegetables, but you can make it part of a bigger meal.
This recipe has taken on so many forms and so many lives. I've shared it with so many friends over the years since you and I started making it together. I even taught it at a summer camp to teens. And what I was teaching was here's how you can inexpensively make a big pot of food for people with a wide variety of diets. Because
Yes.
this dish is completely vegan, it's completely gluten free, it costs very little to make a huge batch, and it has tons of protein, vegetables, and flavor. And just briefly to describe it, if you've never heard us talking about it or you don't know what we're talking about, it's red split lentils, which you can find at any grocery store, combined with a lot of aromatics and spices. So you saute a base of onions, carrots, celery, garlic, and ginger. To that, you add turmeric, and I like to add garam masala or some kind of spice blend,
Right.
coriander.
The black pepper and the garum is what gives it a nice depth. Because I
I
think
think it's
that,
also
yes,
the cinnamon and sometimes
yes,
clove. It's warming spices in there. And then coriander, cumin, tomato paste for you need that for umami, 2 cans of coconut milk, water. And then at the end, the other big tip is to always squeeze a little lime or lemon juice on top. And that brings out all the flavor. It adds just another, it's not too lemony or too citrusy. Lentils really like acidity. So this is such a beginner friendly recipe. It's something, like I said, I taught to teenagers, some of them who never cooked before. And it's another one of those things I love. It's like I get to go keep sharing this in the world. I bring it to people if they're sick. I make it all throughout the cooler months. It's so warming. And I always think of you when I make it.
I mean, you really took the words right out of my mouth. Every time I make it, I think of you. I think of us standing there together talking about it. And I also have shared it with so many people and have had so many people call me and say, like, wait, what is that? What is that jar that you sent me the other day? And I'm like, just it's coconut lentils. It's so much bigger than the sum of its parts. It's so special. It is so forgiving. It's such a great beginner recipe.
So, Carrie, what is one of your top 5 best bites?
Well, Sonia, this one is also a real homage to you because it's your simple tomato confit. That is a recipe that kind of, was sort of swirling around me. But when you and I started really becoming better friends and sharing recipes, it's really something that helped me. I did not like tomatoes. I kind of forced myself to learn how to eat them in salads.
Even as an adult, did you not like tomatoes when you were in your 20s?
Even as an adult, I did
Yeah.
not really like tomatoes. I think part of that was if you don't really know what a good tomato tastes like, then you don't really understand the magic of them. And so, what I love about a cherry tomato confit is that you can really use basic cherry tomatoes that you also find at the grocery store. Sure, it gets a lot better when you have homegrown tomatoes or tomatoes from the farmer's market, but a basic cherry tomato that is cooked with a little bit of garlic, a little bit of thyme, and a good amount of olive oil is such a magical thing. It yields into a beautiful sauce that I used a lot with my clients. I cooked all the time. It's something that you can eat all through the year in the winter and the summer. Winter tomatoes are notoriously terrible, but even a cherry tomato in the winter is so much better when you confit.
It came out of having too many cherry tomatoes in my garden one summer. And I mean, I'd made versions of it in the past, but this is when I really started to make it is when I was gardening. And all you're doing is really, like you said, cooking tomatoes and olive oil, and you can throw in some herbs or garlic if you want, or nothing at all, honestly. And then it preserves it, and you can put it in a jar and put it in your fridge, and it lasts for months, especially if you only use clean utensils when you get anything out of it, and especially if you leave a layer of oil on the top. That's my other note. So sometimes what I do is I just make that confit in the middle of summer and I stick it in the back of my fridge
Yeah.
so that in December, when I'm missing tomatoes and want that sweetness on a pasta, on a bruschetta, on a piece of toast, that's when I reach for the jar are. And I'm just so happy that you've incorporated this into your cooking too, because I do think it's one of those real home cook advantages. It's a real gift to yourself, like we always talk about.
As someone who thinks about helping my son learn how to eat and learn how to eat seasonal produce, how to eat vegetables, how to eat fruits, being able to repeat that idea over and over again, that's also a gift to myself and it's a gift to him. It's a gift to the ease of the kitchen and also teaching him how delicious different flavors can be out in the world.
Absolutely.
Sonia, what's your next best bite that you want to share?
I have to share again the no measure French yogurt cake.
Yes, yes.
I think it was one of those things where I'd known about this recipe forever. I had made it at some point, also, I think maybe even when I was young. And then it was kind of going viral on social media. And I was like, you know what? I do think this is a recipe everyone should know, every home cook should know. And so I made it one week and I was like, yep, this is my best bite. And we shared it and we shared it on our Substack too. And it's really sort of taken a life of its own, which I love this kind of recipe. I mean, I don't know who invented it. It does come from France. It involves their little pots of yogurt. In France, yogurt comes in these little containers, although in America, you could use any container of yogurt you have too. And the idea is you empty your single serving yogurt container, and everything is like a ratio of 1 container yogurt to 2 containers of sugar to 3 containers of flour with 3 eggs. You mix it all in one bowl. The recipe we shared also has measurements if you're like, I don't want to use this method. But
Right.
the point of this method is that it's so reliable that even if your measurements are a little off, you have a little extra sugar, a little extra flour, it's not going to affect this cake. And then you bake it either in a loaf tin or in a cake pan. You can kind of bake it in anything you have. And then if you want to make it fancier, you could add some blueberries, raspberries. You could add some more spices. You could add zest, citrus zest. You could add nothing at all and just keep it to the yogurt, sugar, eggs, and flour, and it will be good. It is one of the most forgiving, beginning baker friendly recipes of all time.
I was the same. I had heard about it, and I actually heard about it through like a parenting book where it talked about how in France, this is a recipe that this is where a lot of kids learn how to cook. This is like they get their yogurt container and they measure this way. And I loved that idea. I just never really explored it until you brought it to our conversation immediately when you shared this Best Bite. I've made this, I can't even tell you how many times I've made this cake now. I do bake a lot and I share a lot in my son's school community. And the amount of times when people are like, oh, you've got that cake again, it just makes me laugh. It really is so forgiving and it freezes well.
Does freeze well. I just defrosted one this weekend that I had
Yes,
made a few months ago. I'm so glad you brought that up.
you can stick it in the freezer. And when you're like, oh, I'm going to so and so's house for brunch, I can take this for them. Or someone has invited me for dinner. I'm going to bring this cake for them so that they can eat it for breakfast the next day. It's really so simple and so generous all at the same time.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those cake recipes I know we're both going to be making for decades.
Yes, totally.
Carrie, what's your next best bite?
Well, Sonia, I want to share my monster cookie recipe again. Monster cookies were very much a part of my childhood. So, monster cookie recipe that I use is actually from the high school I attended, and the cook of the high school was a family friend of ours. And our high school had these incredible monster cookies. And so at one point, my mom got a hold of the recipe, and it's in a couple of those regional cookbooks that are printed by the church or the women's group of the town or whatever. What's amazing about the recipe that I used, it calls for like a dozen eggs.
I just have to stop you. So when you first shared this, I could not believe the recipe itself. I'm so glad you're walking us through it because monster, it doesn't just describe the cookie, it describes the amount of cookies you're going to make when you make this recipe.
The recipe that I shared is actually a half of what I use at home. So this recipe that we share is 6 eggs, 2 cups of sugar, 2 cups of brown sugar, a cup of melted butter, 3 cups of creamy peanut butter, 9 cups of oatmeal, baking soda, vanilla extract, and then a pound of M&Ms.
Carrie, that is already a huge cookie base, right?
It's a
And you're
huge
saying
cookie.
it was
Yes.
double?
It's double that. Basically, what my recipe says is you mix it in a bus tub. Like you mix it in like a giant tub that you would bust dishes with. And that is kind of really what you need. And if you think about taking 3 cups of peanut butter or 6 cups of peanut butter or 9 cups of oatmeal or 18 cups of oatmeal and trying to stir that together, it is so hard to stir. It's such a workout. But the first time that I made it, I just made it as is, the whole recipe, because I thought, you know what? My mom used to make this. I remember these cookies. They were so good. And one of the things that I don't remember about the cookie is that it actually has no gluten in it. It's just oatmeal. It's just
Yeah.
oats. And they're so pretty and they're so big and they're so fun to share. And so the first time I made it, I scooped out all the cookies, I froze them on a sheet pan, and then I saved all of that dough. And it really took me the whole entire summer to use all of that dough. But I was very popular. Anywhere that I went, I would take monster cookies. You know, people are excited to see them. I think it made like 16 pounds of cookie dough.
Still remember that. I mean, but it makes sense if it comes from a professional kitchen where you're feeding a bunch of kids. It
Yes.
would make sense it's a volume recipe. And it would also make sense that it's great to make so much at once because both of us love to store cookie dough in our freezer and bake it off when we need it. There have been so many times where I have a last minute invitation, or I know someone's going through a hard time, or I'm going to the farmer's market and want to bring a gift for someone who's been really nice to me there, and just whipping out those balls of cookie dough is such a life hack. And it tastes just as good as if you, or probably better because you've let the dough rest than if you're baking it off immediately.
So, Sonia, what's your next recipe that you want to share?
Talking about the freezer is a perfect segue because this is something I also like to stock my freezer with. And this is something that is absolutely, I cannot make it without thinking about you, which is stuffed shells. I know this is one of the first things you ever made and something you've been making since high school, something you're known for. And while you didn't have a written recipe, I don't think it's even the kind of thing where you need a written recipe.
You
It's
don't.
like, it's one of those, again, beginner friendly things. And all these beginner friendly recipes, there's a reason I love them so much because no matter how experienced you are as a cook, having easy recipes is always a win. And I really started making this at least once a year, and I always make extra and I always freeze extra to bring to someone if there's like a meal train. This is one of those perfect dishes for that, but also it's just so fun to eat. And, I just riff on an Ina Garten recipe. It's as easy as can be. You can use store-bought sauce. You cook off your big shells and you fill them with a ricotta mixture with cheese and herbs, and then you top it with a bunch more grated cheese.
Sonia, I think it's also a great reminder that it is such a beginner dish and it's so very forgiving. Sometimes I like to add kale from my garden. Adding a bunch of basil is really nice. You can use store-bought sauce if you want. It's really such a fun dish to make, and there's something that feels slightly more elevated about it because it's an individual shell instead of like a big lasagna. I love a lasagna too, but I don't know. I just think they're so pretty when you bake them off and you serve them to
Do
someone.
I do think they're prettier than a lasagna. And I'm
Yeah.
glad you said the spinach because I always add spinach. I always add spinach to lasagna and I always add spinach to stuffed shells or any other green. I do have to say, I just learned for the first time about a week ago that Jonathan is not such a huge fan of stuffed
No.
shells.
Oh no. But
And it
that's
was,
okay. That's
it's
okay. You love
okay.
them
It's
and
okay.
most
I
people
love
love them.
the reason I bring it up is not to give Jonathan a hard time because you and I both really support that people have their preferences and that's okay. And we're not judging anybody. But I say that because I really assumed every person who can eat dairy on the planet would love
Yeah.
stuffed shells. And I have learned that it's not just Jonathan. There's many other people, and their biggest complaint is they don't like too much ricotta. And I understand that, like that ricotta as a texture and flavor isn't always everyone's favorite. So if that's not your thing, then this is not your dish. My last caveat is though, if you can find good ricotta and full fat ricotta in particular, it
Yes.
makes a big
It
difference in
does.
stuffed shells.
Yes. And also like add a little extra grated garlic into it and I stuff it full of greens. And
Yeah,
I think that is a nice balance of that creamy ricotta and lots of greens and lots of garlic. That's what I like about it.
that's so true. Well, Carrie, what's your next best bite?
Well, Sonia, my next bite is French onion crostini. And this was a recipe that my friend Maylin made. We were on spring break together, and she and I like to collaborate on our menus. We travel together. And so she brought this French onion crostini. She actually used one of the tips that we shared on our show, which is that you can caramelize onions in your slow cooker. And so she did that and made this ahead of time and brought it. It was just such a perfect bite for a moment when we'd had a long day on the trails, we've been hiking, and I've made it so many times since then. French onion soup was like a flavor of my childhood, and this kind of has the best version of it, which is more bread, the onions, and then all the cheese in a perfect bite.
You toast the bread, you top them with
Yes.
caramelized onions, you top on the cheese, and you put it in the
And you
oven.
stick it in the oven, and then it kind of just looks like a little cheesy toast, but then you can garnish it with fresh thyme. It's so simple and it's so pretty, and it's a great appetizer that you can kind of make and execute right at the last minute as people are walking in the door and still serve them something warm and cheesy.
Can you make this even a few weeks ago? Am I
I did.
right?
Yeah,
What?
even in the summer, I like to make this. I make this year round because I love it that much.
There's so many things I love that about why this ended up on your list of top 5 best bites. I love that it came from Maylin because that was the way we started this was
Yes.
because there were so many recipes you introduced to me that I never ever would have thought to try. But because you told me, "Hey, this recipe is super good," then I made it. Now I can't even think of how many dishes I make that came from you. And in fact, our 200th episode, I think I named several of them as well. I love that even though French onion soup is something like that you really love and have nostalgia for, you hadn't tried this recipe or this crostini or known about it.
I never would
And
have even
then
thought about it.
right. And that is one of my favorite things. I love that it involves slow cooker caramelized onions because that's another thing. You and I've swapped so many notes of like, oh, did you know you could do this in the slow cooker? Do you know you could do
Well, I
this
learned
way?
that from you. I mean, I've had a slow cooker since I graduated from high school. My dad gave me a slow cooker for my going to college. And he's also said a couple of times, like, oh, I don't even know if you use things like this. This is more of the way that we eat here in the Midwest. And I'm like, no, I use my slow cooker for a couple of things, but you have actually showed me more recipes, more contemporary recipes that I use my slow cooker for. And it's such a good reminder that if you take it out, it just does all this work for you.
Because caramelized onions are not a thing that you can rush. They just take the time they take to get truly caramelized onions. And I love hearing you talk about your love for it. And I've heard you share it with so many other people. So I think that's really the spirit of this list is what are you really making over and over again?
Absolutely. Well, Sonia, what's your next recipe?
Okay, I can't even tell you how many times I've made this. It's the Instant Pot Polenta Cacio e Pepe by Carla Lawley Music. I don't know what it is about this recipe. For one, I actually love my Instant Pot. Like, I happen to use it quite a bit. I use it as a rice cooker. I use it for broths. I use it for a couple specific things, and I probably use it the most for this.
I really love that. I mean, but I feel like this dish is such a blank canvas for essentially any vegetable that's growing at any time of year, correct?
Well, let me tell you how I've been using it. So, all you do is you take polenta, which is fine cornmeal, and you combine it with water and salt and pepper. And now the pepper at this stage is very important because what happens in a pressure cooker is it infuses everything with the flavor of what you're adding to it. It's why I also like to make congee in my Instant Pot as well. And so, yes, you can make this on the stove and it will be delicious. If you don't have an Instant Pot, you can absolutely do this on a stovetop. But what I love about it is I just throw in my water, my salt, pepper, my polenta, I close the lid, and I just let it go. And then the other thing is it keeps it warm if I need more time because I think it only takes about 10 minutes on high pressure, something pretty quick. And so while that is happening, I might saute some greens, to your point, saute some mushrooms. I love mushrooms and polenta.
Yes.
Or I might have a braised meat that I'm reheating or that I'm
Mhm.
serving at a dinner party, like braised short ribs, because polenta and short ribs go so well together. But I think it's really both about the technique and the ratios here. After your polenta cooks is when you add all this Parmesan or pecorino or a combination of both. And then you whisk it all together. And you also, I believe, add a little bit of butter. But there's no heavy cream. There's not a tremendous amount of butter, but feels so extravagant when it really isn't. And it's, to your point, that perfect base for vegetables, for meat. I've served it with just countless side dishes.
Yeah, I think that's why it becomes such a huge part of your kitchen though, is because you find such versatility in it. And I think it would be easy to say like polenta, especially like a cacio pepe, rich polenta like that is really only good for the winter. But if you think about putting some kind of spring greens and peas on top of that, that immediately elevates it to a different kind of seasonal dish. It's one of those things that as a home cook, you're like in the back of my mind, what are some of these recipes I can almost do in my sleep? And then what else do I have in my fridge that will make this that I can combine it with? It might be a braised meat, but it also might just be like a quick saute of mushrooms with some garlic and some white wine. And that's dinner. You've what, spent 20 minutes doing that?
Yeah, it happens so fast. Well, Carrie, what is your next best bite?
Well, Sonia, I was so excited to share with you this crispy taco salad that I had when I was away at a wedding weekend. It was really one of those like from the 80s and 90s fried flour tortilla shell with a taco salad inside of it. And it was just executed so well. It wasn't the sort of heavy versions that I remember from restaurants when I was growing up, where it would have a bunch of ground meat and just a little bit of lettuce and then tons of sour cream and guacamole. It was this really delicious shaved cabbage salad. There were roasted vegetables in there. I think there was some roasted cauliflower. And then it had this really beautiful, bright cilantro y dressing. It was one of those moments where I was like, oh, I recognize this. And I can bring this back into my life in a really fun way, in the way that I like to eat, with seasonal vegetables and great herby flavors. And so it just inspired me to come back to my home kitchen and tell you about this and then also make it myself. I think everyone loves a taco. Everyone loves Taco Tuesday. And this is such an unexpected way to make a Taco Tuesday feel super special.
I really remember this one because I just love those taco shells.
Yes.
And it was something I always had in our college cafeteria. Once a week, there was like a taco shell day and you could
Yes.
make a taco salad. I was obsessed. And so when you brought this up, it had been over a decade since I'd eaten a taco salad. And I think I had one shortly after you brought it up. And that's part of what I love about these conversations is you go out in the world and find something and you bring it here and then it makes me want to try it or find it out in the world. And, and I know so many people have reflected back to us the same thing happens for them. That's why we love hearing about your best bites. We often ask at the end of our posts on Instagram or on our Substack because every time someone shares an idea, it gives you ideas. It's just
Yes,
how it works.
it inspires us. And so the taco shells, one of the things that's so fun about it is you can make it vegan, you can make it meat heavy, you can put lots of vegetables in it, you can customize it as you wish. And I think that versatility is so nice.
Absolutely.
Okay, Sonia, so what is your last best bite? Not your worst best bite or your best bite, but what is the final one you're sharing today?
Right. There's no order. So my one of my top five, and this is the last one of the top five that I'm sharing, has to be egg salad. The egg salad has recently taken on a new life. I mean,
Oh,
I
I'm
have to
so
preface,
excited to hear what you mean by that. I
yeah.
feel like we're sort of in just such two camps about egg salad, but there are times when I crave your egg salad over my egg salad. So how has the egg salad taken a new life?
Well, okay, first of all, why I felt like I had to include this is I just think it represents so much of our food friendship, which is that no, we do not always agree. And no, we come from really different food backgrounds,
Yeah.
family backgrounds, life experiences. We have different preferences. Like every two humans on the planet, we're not going to be the same. And what I've always loved is that we can have these debates, and sometimes it changes what I'm making and sometimes it changes what you're making, and sometimes it doesn't at all.
Right.
And it's something I really value in friendship is that ability to say, hey, I don't like it the way you like it, but we can still be friends and we can still support each other. And I can actually even make your recipe for the people who I think will like it. And I can make my recipe for the people who I think might like that. It's not that I started making it your way or anything like that. I still pretty much stick to my egg salad, which, just as a refresher, the main feature of my egg salad recipe is something I learned from one of my culinary mentors. When I first started recipe developing and working on cooking shows and working on cookbooks, I had to test recipes for a cookbook. And the person writing that cookbook, one of the recipes that she wrote was an egg salad recipe. And she instructed you to take the cooked yolks, like you cook your eggs, and then you separate the whites from the yolks, and you make a dressing with the the egg yolks combined in your food processor or mashed with a fork, almost the way you would for deviled eggs. And that was a real game changer for me to approach it this way. And it does make it more involved. No one's pretending it doesn't. But just in the past few months, I've had two kind of big egg salad moments. One, I was hired to cater this luncheon and they wanted an array of sandwiches. And I made this egg salad sandwich. And it was the kind of thing where it was one of those everyone asking, how do you make this egg salad? They could tell it was different. And I was like, wow, okay, maybe there's really something to this egg salad. And of course, I used to serve it at my deli too. So I knew there was like a following, but I hadn't served it to like a public group of people. This was like 80 or more people. I hadn't done that since I had a restaurant. So I've had some distance from serving egg salad. And then also I brought it to a farmer friend at the farmer's market. And at first he's like, oh yeah, I don't even really like egg salad. But he had been asking me if I had make anything with a lot of protein. So the next week when I came back, he was like, this is my favorite egg salad of all time. I can't even believe how good it is. I'm going to have to keep eating it forever. I need the recipe. And so every time that happens, I do think of you because we have talked about eggs more than almost any other ingredient. And we have talked about egg salad more than almost any other dish.
Yeah, and what I love about you talking about going to this large event and how having people come up to you and say, "What's in this egg salad?" It reminds me of the way you described in one of our very first episodes, the life-changing frittata, and how you were working with another chef and she made this incredible frittata and you served it and then you standing in the kitchen witnessed people being like, wait, this is so different. When you talk about the way that you make the egg salad and you're sort of making this super creamy dressing with the yolks, that's what makes your egg salad different from mine. For people to be tasting that and say like, wow, I've never had egg salad like this before, it really leaves an impression on you. That has happened to me. I used to make egg salad for this one family in particular, and mine was fluffy. I would put it on these little pretzel rolls that I would buy from one of our local bakeries. And years later, I saw the grandfather of this family and he just saw me at an event. Oh, he just looked at me and I could tell that he couldn't remember my name. He just looked at me and goes, God, your egg salad. And, I just think, and that's what is beautiful about it is that ours are totally different and they both have their own place out in the world.
I think there's something in the hands too.
Yes.
I don't know that I can ever make egg salad, even if I followed your recipe, which we're going to share. We have a Substack post that has both recipes in it. So you're more of a Carrie person where you want just mayonnaise and you don't want anything to mess with your egg salad. Or maybe you're more like me and you want a few more ingredients and you want to take a little extra time. There's a place for everyone. And I love having these conversations with you and I want to keep having them. And then knowing that part of what makes your egg salad special is that you made it and you served it and you served it with love.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And that there's such value in having multiple ways of doing it because there's so many different ways to enjoy it.
So, Carrie, what was your last top 5 best bite?
Well, Sonia, it's one that you brought to our conversation, which is glow soup, this viral glow soup. You're so good at finding these kind of recipes. I really made it in a moment where I was like, okay, this is really simple. It's leeks, it's carrots, it's some peppers, some pretty simple aromatics, and then you add coconut milk to it. It just blew me away. And I've now made it countless times. And it's one of those recipes that when I'm going to cook for someone who has had a baby or is going through a rough time or a friend that's just a little bit sick and needs some support, this is one of those recipes that just I can make in my sleep. I know it's going to fit every dietary restriction that people do or don't have, and it's going to be delicious. And the amount of times that I've given this to people and they've called me the next day and said, what is in that soup? I don't understand why it's so good. I'm like, I kind of really don't understand either. It's one of those magical things that is so comforting and also it's so incredibly beautiful. The color is just stunning.
Yeah, it's something I make for clients too and friends. And that's what I love about a great recipe. It takes on a life of its own and it becomes yours. Yes, we both got this soup from someone else who developed something that lots of people love, but I am sure the people you give it to think of it as Carrie's soup.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter. It's
Yeah.
like each cook has their own touch and has their own way of using it and continues to make it. I just love that through line that connects us all.
Yeah, and I think it's also proof that a good recipe can come from any place. and can
Yeah.
come from it can come from a restaurant chef, it can come from an experienced recipe developer, or it can just come from someone on TikTok who just has this incredible recipe that they make that suddenly resonates with millions of people and finds its way into our kitchen, and then we get to share it with other people and connect with them. That's what you and I realized is so special about our friendship, is being able to talk out these ideas makes us better home cooks, and it connects us. And I think that's what we're all really looking for, is connection in the kitchen.
Yeah, Carrie. I mean, gosh, so much has come out of these 300 episodes. Truly, it has changed my life in the kitchen. It has changed how I cook for other people. It's introduced me to so many incredible home cooks out in the world. And it's not what I expected. When we started this, it really was like, oh, can we help other home cooks the way we've helped each other? And can we do a project that's fun? And can we hang out once a week since we live in different cities? Those are sort of the guiding lights of this podcast. It is a labor of love. A podcast involves a lot of things beyond just the recording, beyond just these amazing conversations. So really want to thank everyone who listens, because we truly couldn't keep doing this without you. Every single one of your messages, your kind reviews, the things you've shared. Sandra recently sent us a PowerPoint presentation telling us what this podcast has meant to her that brought us both to tears. Diane in Illinois, you've shared so many times what this means to you. And every time we get one of those messages, it uplifts our hearts. We're just calling out a few, but there's countless people who've done this. We read every single email, every single DM, every single comment, and each one keeps us going and gives us motivation to keep creating new shows.
Yeah, it's become so much bigger than just our friendship. And Sonia, one of the places that we found incredible connection with our listeners is through our monthly Q&A sessions. So each month we come up with a theme. Everyone gathers for an hour. We talk about what we're cooking. We talk about what our best bites are. We've had other home cooks share the menus that they've been cooking for their families and also share their questions. What I find so inspiring is to know that there's so many incredible home cooks out there that we can share ideas. I always walk away inspired to cook something new, to cook something different. And I always want to know, like, what's this person cooking, or what is this person cooking?
What's been so surprising to me is when we started it, I really didn't know what would happen when we would have these live meetings. So to have our audience show up and connect not only to us, but with each other, form their own conversations. People are so knowledgeable and so generous with their knowledge and ask such good questions, not just of us, but of each other. And it's the kind of thing that's so fun that it's something I look forward to every single month. It's kind of like cookbook club, where getting to be in a room and really talk about recipes and what's working in each other's kitchens and what's tasting good and how we're problem solving, hosting or lunches or breakfasts or grilling or any number of topics. I didn't realize how much that would mean to me. And then hearing that it's meaning so much to the people who keep coming back month after month, it's hard to put into words what it feels like to be in a connected live space. All of our paid subscribers, it's just been so incredible to actually get to meet you, to interact with you. And we really want to thank you too for just being such amazing supporters.
If you're thinking about joining one of these live calls, we'd be thrilled to have you. You'll walk away with a lot of great ideas like we do every single month.
And you might just walk away with some new food friends.
Well, Sonia, I can't wait to share our best bite next week.
Me too. It might just become a top 10. You never know.
You never know. Well, until next time,
Bye.
bye. Thanks for being our food friend.
If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with friends. We love hearing from you, so follow us on Instagram or drop us a line at foodfriendspodcast.com.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you and your food friends. Happy cooking and eating.